In 1472, a young apprentice in Florence, already a gifted artist, decided to reject the world's need boundaries and obsessively study mechanics, optics, and human anatomy.
Okay, let's just pause on that for a second. Because that single sentence, that one moment in time, it captures the exact spark that lit a fire in human thought. For Leonardo da Vinci, this wasn't just, a career move. This was an act of full-blown intellectual rebellion. In a world that was all about strict guilds and specialization, he made a choice to fuse his art with hardcore scientific inquiry. And that, right there, is the true origin of his genius. It wasn't a brushstroke. It was a decision. The decision to see the world not as a bunch of separate boxes, but as one giant, interconnected system.
And that realization, that is the absolute core of what we're exploring today. He understood that to really paint a muscle, you have to first understand how it actually works. To capture the way light falls on a canvas, you need to understand the physics of optics. This was never about being a jack of all trades. It was about becoming a master of one enormous thing, reality itself. So what we're going to do is deconstruct this very method, what we're calling the Da Vinci Model, and figure out how it systematically created a blueprint for genius.
All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we're going to look at that initial rejection of boundaries. Then, we'll see how his biggest disadvantages actually turned into his greatest assets. Next up, we'll break down the 3 core pillars of his genius model. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, the daily habits he used to put it all into practice. Then, we'll look at his ultimate transformation. And finally, the most important part, how you can take this blueprint and start unlocking your own potential. Let's dive in.
The whole story of Leonardo's genius really kicks off with him consciously and profoundly rejecting the path that was basically laid out for him. I mean, think about it. In 15th century Florence, if you were an artist, you were an artist, period. You mastered your craft, you did your commissions, and you stayed in your lane. But for Leonardo, that felt like a creative prison. He just knew, instinctively, that true mastery meant looking way, way beyond the canvas.
And this brings us to the one big question that honestly drove his entire life. If you want to paint the most lifelike human being, or the most chaotic battle scene, or the most peaceful landscape, where do you get the information to do that? Do you just copy the old masters? Do you practice your brushwork over and over again? For Leonardo, the answer to all of that was a very loud, definitive no. The answers, he was convinced, were out there, in the world itself. They were in the way water flows, in the complex anatomy of a bird's wing, in the layers of rock on a mountainside, and in the thousands of muscles that create a human smile. So he completely shifted his focus from just representing things to deeply, systematically understanding them. He wasn't just painting a river, he was studying fluid dynamics. He wasn't just drawing a body, he was in a morgue dissecting it to understand its mechanics. This was the fundamental leap that set him apart from everyone else.
Now, here's what's so fascinating about this. His totally unique approach, it wasn't born in some fancy, prestigious academy. Nope, it was forged in struggle. His greatest disadvantages, being an illegitimate son, having no formal classical education, they actually became the catalysts for his revolutionary method. They forced him to build his entire system of learning from scratch.
You see, because he was born out of wedlock, the doors to a formal university was slammed shut in his face. He couldn't go study the classics in Latin like the sons of wealthy merchants. Now, on the surface, that seems like a massive disadvantage, but it turned out to be his superpower. The university education of the day was all based on studying ancient texts, knowledge filtered down through generations. It was a top-down approach. Learn the old theory first, then try to make reality fit it. Well, Leonardo was forced to do the exact opposite. He had to invent a bottom-up method, one that started with his own 2 eyes. For him, reality always came first, and any theory had to be built from what he could see, touch, and measure for himself.
This also explains one of the biggest knocks against him, that he left so many projects unfinished. But that wasn't a flaw, it was a feature of the system. His curiosity was so relentless, his mind so impatient, that once he cracked the code, once he figured out the core problem, be it the mechanics of flight or the anatomy needed for a sculpture, the final, tedious execution just wasn't as interesting to him anymore. The real prize, the real thrill, was always the process of discovery. It shows his true focus was on gaining knowledge, not just on making a finished product.
So from this foundation, this obsession with direct observation and valuing the process, he built an actual formal philosophy, a model for learning and innovation that was based on one incredibly profound belief. This wasn't just a guy with a bunch of hobbies. This was a systematic, deliberate approach to knowledge itself. And right at the very heart of the Da Vinci model is this powerful assertion: all knowledge is connected. He simply didn't see a meaningful line between art and science, or between engineering and biology. To him, the patterns that governed the swirl of water going down a drain were related to the patterns in a braid of hair. The mechanics of a bird's wing could absolutely inform the design of a flying machine. This total rejection of intellectual silos, that is the master key to his genius.
His whole model is built on 3 core pillars. First, Saper Vedere, which translates to knowing how to see, but it's so much deeper than just looking. It's a discipline. Second, pattern recognition, which was his active, systematic hunt for analogies and connections across totally different fields. And third, what he called the humility of the unfinished, which is that psychological freedom you get when you value the process of learning more than the final product. These 3 pillars were the engine that drove his curiosity. So let's break each one down.
Let's start with the absolute bedrock of his entire system, Saper Vedere. This isn't just a suggestion, it's a mandate, a command you give yourself. It's not about passive looking, it's about active, deep, rigorous observation. It's about training your eyes to see with the precision of a scientific instrument, to see the 10 different types of light and shadow on a person's face, to see exactly how a leaf connects to its stem. Think of it like this, it's the difference between glancing at your smartphone and truly seeing it. The exact curve of the glass, the way light warps around the edge, the precise spacing of the icons. It's a disciplined, almost meditative practice of perception.
Okay, so that's the philosophy. But a philosophy is just a bunch of nice ideas without action, right? So how did he actually apply these pillars day in and day out? Well, Leonardo developed very specific, systematic habits that were designed to maximize his ability to observe, document, and connect ideas from the world around him. This is the system in action.
His number 1 tool? His journal. We have thousands of pages from his notebooks, and let me be clear, these are not diaries. They are working laboratories on paper. They're jam-packed with sketches of inventions, deep anatomical studies, complex mathematical calculations, and just simple, everyday observations. This was his external brain, his hard drive. It was a systematic way to capture every question and every discovery, making sure no idea was ever lost. It was the physical expression of Saper Vedere and the playground for finding patterns.
And this is where we get to that famous detail you've probably heard about. He often wrote backwards in mirror script. Now, a lot of people thought this was for secrecy, to protect his inventions, but the real reason is actually way cooler, and it's twofold. One, as a lefty, it was just physically easier, he wouldn't smudge the ink, but more importantly, it created a private, frictionless space for his ideas to just flow, completely uninterrupted by the prying eyes or premature judgments of other people. It kept his creative process pure.
His other key habit was, well, it was pretty intense. Systematic dissection. This is Saper Vedere taken to its absolute extreme. To really understand how to draw the human body, he knew he had to understand its functional truth from the inside out. He personally dissected more than 30 human corpses, along with countless animals, a very difficult and dangerous thing to do at the time. This wasn't some morbid fascination. This was a rigorous, hands-on pursuit of the truth, making sure that his art and his inventions were always bolted to the bedrock of how things actually work. So, you take this lifelong, systematic application of curiosity. What do you get? What's the end result? Well, it's the complete transformation of one man into an archetype for all of humanity. He became the living embodiment of human potential, the ultimate Renaissance man, a term that he basically invented and defined for the rest of history. I mean, just trace the path. He starts as an outsider, this illegitimate apprentice who's denied a formal education. Through his own method, he becomes a master artist, totally redefining what was even possible on a canvas. But he doesn't stop there. He then pushes into completely uncharted territory as a scientific pioneer in anatomy, optics, engineering, you name it. And the synthesis of all of it, the combination of everything, that creates the final form, the Renaissance man, a universal genius who proved one mind could grasp the whole of human knowledge.
And this gets to the absolute heart of the matter. His true legacy isn't just the Mona Lisa or a notebook full of flying machines. It is the powerful, undeniable proof that an insatiable, boundless curiosity, when you channel it through a rigorous and systematic method, is the most powerful engine for progress we have. He basically institutionalized the interdisciplinary approach and showed the world its incredible power. Which, of course, brings us to the most important question of all. What does this mean for us? What's the takeaway? The beauty of the Da Vinci model is that it's not some inaccessible magic. It's a blueprint. It's a set of principles and habits that anyone can learn and apply, if you're willing to really cultivate your own curiosity. So here it is, your blueprint for curiosity.
First, practice Saper Vedere. Don't just look at the world, train your senses to truly see it. Notice the details everyone else misses. Second, actively hunt for analogies. Ask yourself, how is this problem at my job like a problem in biology? Or how is this family dynamic like an ecosystem? Systematically connect the unconnected. Third, treat the world as your personal laboratory. Be an experimenter in your own life. Test your assumptions. And finally, and this is a big one, learn to be comfortable with the unknown. Understand that the biggest breakthroughs are hiding at the intersection of questions you haven't even thought to ask yet.
When we look back, let's remember that Leonardo da Vinci built his entire legacy on the profound truth that curiosity is the engine of all invention. The Da Vinci Model wasn't a mystical gift. It was a systematic blueprint for transforming the world through rigorous observation and the relentless connection of ideas. He left us with a lesson as simple as it is powerful, an immutable rule that guided his life and can guide ours. Your mind is capable of anything it chooses to observe.